Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Illustration Department podcast. My name is Giuseppe Castellano. In this podcast, I talk to folks in illustration, graphic design, publishing, animation, and other creative fields about their work, the lessons they've learned, and the bumps and bruises they've experienced along the way. In this episode, my guest is New York Times bestselling author, cartoonist, and educator, Bob Eckstein. To create a fascinating illustration, or a great gag cartoon, you don't need to sweat. You just need a little spit. Don't worry, Bob will explain. Among the topics, Bob tells us why creatives should not be open to AI. We talk about how an artist can know when any given work of art is done. And Bob shares the greatest footnote on living a life as an illustrator. I hope you enjoy our conversation. What's easier, being interviewed or interviewing folks on your own podcast, The Cartoon Pad?
I like being interviewed. When you interview other people, you always have a pre-notion of what you're hoping they're going to say. You know, I like your take on it, which is, let's have a chat.
Right.
It's not really an interview.
No.
And I'm hoping to learn something anytime I talk to someone, no matter what side of the mic I'm on.
Based on our emails, it seems as if you've done nothing but interview over the last month. It just feels like that's all you're doing. Like you're not brushing your teeth, you're not combing your hair. It's like one interview after another. It doesn't feel like a book tour, more like book torture. Am I calling it right there?
It would be torture if it was all one subject. But luckily for me, I kind of have like these different avenues to go down.
Right.
So some people are asking me to discuss the weather and making snowmen. And that would be like all these BBC radio stations that have maybe had a guest drop out and they hurry up and scramble to get someone on their show. And so they look up like world's greatest snowman expert, or they've had me on before and we've had a good time. And next thing I know, I'm talking snowmen. And then another time I may be talking about writing or something.
Right.
Because what happened was I stopped teaching. I was teaching at NYU.
Yeah.
I had been teaching my whole life, and teaching changed drastically to the point that I decided to step aside. And I'm going to explain really quickly, if you don't mind, why the change. It was the students' approach to the classroom was only based on reward. And I understand why. They are really in a very tough spot right now. The job market and everything is so much about performance driven.
Right.
Maybe when you and I went to school, we were thinking about what we're going to get out of a class or something.
Right.
But nowadays, they just want to know they get a good grade, to the point that other teachers and I, before the semester would start, would say, let's just give them their grade before the class and get it out of the way, because it's stopping the learning. It's like actually an obstacle. It was getting to the point that the students were arguing, or they were trying to give rewards to the teachers and myself to get a good grade. And it was just so, it was just yuck.
Right.
And so I stepped away. But now I'm still teaching, but I'm doing it in a different way.
Yeah.
I get interviewed. I'll go on podcasts, workshops.
Yep.
I'm going to be speaking at different events and conferences. And there I get a chance to kind of talk about like my take on maybe how to be funny or how to maybe get published. I mean, I feel confident about that second part because I've been published by different levels.
Yep.
I've been self-published. I did like Medium. And I've also got a chance to do some of the larger houses. So I could share with people my personal experience of like what would be the difference, what's expected of you when you get in there, and like what's the pros and cons. And I get a lot of satisfaction of that, because when I struggled, I kind of wished I had someone like that who would give me sort of that advice that's kind of off the books, the nuts and bolts.
Sure.
You know, I listen to your podcast and I always think,
thanks.
You've been there, you know, in those same sort of stepping stones that I went through too. I think in some cases a higher level than me, and I'm always curious to hear when you do dive into talking about that. I'm curious about that because you just want to always know sort of like what's happening in the business.
I know it's anecdotal, small sample size and everything, but I started working in publishing in the late 90s. I left publishing in the late 20-teens. Hardly anything changed. The process really didn't change. How we found illustrators, how we made books, the programs changed, but the systems in place, the processes really didn't. So since I left, and it's been a while now, every now and then I worry that I'm doling out advice on publishing that's outdated. So I check in with friends and colleagues who still work there. I'm like, hey, is this still how it goes? And the answer is yes.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Do they complain about micromanaging? That's like something that I've noticed with publishing friends. Some people are saying that there are some attitude changes. Do you find that there was nothing that they are coming back with to you?
Well, let's separate how to make a book from what these books are about, or what the editorial departments, what pressures the editorial departments are feeling these days or this decade compared to, let's say, 20 years ago. So just the making of the book, more or less the same. Schedules are a little shorter, I've heard, than they used to be. But by and large, it's relatively the same. The editorial process, or what gets acquired and what editors now have to sort of keep in mind, there are other considerations when society is going one way or the other. There are certain worries. So obviously every decade, every couple of years, editors have a new worry to consider. But when hasn't that happened? Like I bet you if you and I were talking on the radio in the 1930s and we're talking about publishing, we'd probably be saying the exact same thing.
Oh, they were always saying it's dead. Print was dead in 1920. It was dead about 3 weeks after the Gutenberg press was made. Yeah. I want to ask you, though, do you find when you were back in those days that there was more of a wish list from the editors? It's one thing I explain to people who come to me and ask me, what they need to do to get the editor's attention. And it's like I'm explaining for them, often for the first time, the idea that they need to fill a need for an editor. And if they get rejected, it's not something personal, but it's because their book wasn't kind of on their list of things that they were hoping to do that season. And that comes through as a revelation to a lot of writers who have not been published. And I try to break the rejection by explaining, and it's just a matter that you have to find the right place for yourself. Find a place that needs you and your voice.
That is correct.
Oh, and you think that was always the way when you worked? Because you go back longer than I do by many years. Was it like that too?
Yeah, Look, these are all personal observations, right? And the thing about publishing is what I have been critical about on this podcast and over the years post my publishing career about publishing and about people who are professional advice givers, or I hear this from illustrators who overhear this at conferences and whatnot, is someone will have their own personal views and experiences and then say things like all of publishing or all editors. And that just isn't how life works. Just because you have a certain experience doesn't mean that that's what everyone else is going to be having, or just because some editor passed on your book about, I don't know, an apple who wants to be an orange, doesn't mean that another editor is going to go, that's the best idea I've ever heard.
Yes. And you know what?
It's hard to talk about these things and not remember, well, not even hard. If we do talk about these things, let's all remember that every single editor has their own opinions on what is good, what isn't, what works, what doesn't, and so on.
Yeah, it's very interesting. When you say that, the first thing I think of is when people say they want to get published by Random House, Penguin Random House, instead of going to a mid-size, I explained, and you could agree or disagree, that those mid-size and smaller publishers are more likely to take a risk.
Sure.
There's so much money involved with the Penguin Random House production, whatever. They are going to do tried and true, and they're going to try to do books that are not trying to reinvent the wheel. They're not trying to do something totally original, but they want to base it on the track record of successful books out there and be assured that they're not taking a reckless chance.
The short response to that is, yeah, I agree. Though, to be fair to the publishing professionals who are listening to this, I don't know if that's totally accurate. I think I've heard that before, and I'm sure I've said it before, where independent publishers, smaller publishers like the Abrams, the Chronicles, the Holiday Houses, and so on, would, quote unquote, take more chances than the Penguin Random Houses or the Macmillans. It feels as if that's true. However, do we really know that to be true? I don't know where I can find the data to support that.
Yeah.
The thing I will say, though, with the larger publishers, that the editors there have to contend with that maybe the Holiday Houses and the whoever's don't. There are more cooks in the kitchen at the bigger houses.
Yeah.
The art directors want to take a chance on the type of illustrator they want to hire. The editor wants to take a chance on the kind of book they want to acquire, but they also have to get a bunch of approvals before they can move forward. And since the smaller houses are literally smaller, there are fewer people who work there. That means there are fewer approval needs. I think that's more likely.
And I want to ask, is the different imprints all different in attitude and approach as well, you think? I mean,
Absolutely.
Because I only know, of course, the imprints that I worked with. So there might be an imprint that is set up to be more supportive of the new writer, or they're more like capitalizing on what is the trendy book.
Yes. Typically, like the venerable imprints, Dial, let's just stick with Penguin, Dial, Viking, Philomel, imprints that have been around for a long time and they have a real healthy backlist, meaning they make money on these books that have been published, years ago, decades ago, take more chances. Because there's money that they can lean on, and they know that will come in from backlist. So they can take a chance on a front list title. They're more comfortable doing so than maybe a smaller publisher that doesn't have as much of a track record or backlist income to, help them sleep better at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was an art director myself at a publishing house.
Tell me about it. What was your experience?
Well, I'm not going to name the publisher because I would like to be very frank and trash them. I had hired about a dozen illustrators.
Okay.
We did the covers and the interior illustrations for books. And I'm not crazy about the work that we had to work with. The books that we worked with were Vanity Press. It was very much the sort of, I'm going to explain it for anyone who doesn't know what this is Vanity Press is you go to a publisher and they're going to set you up often with a ghostwriter and get your book published that you normally would not get published, let's say with a contract with another big publishing house.
Yeah, but you have to pay them.
You have to pay them. And in this case, it was about $35,000 to get your book published. And you'd have it illustrated, and you'd have a ghostwriter. And this is a lot of people who are, you kind of know, like they're famous, but they couldn't get their memoir or their book out there that they have always dreamed of doing. And this was an answer.
Right.
Anyway, to get to what I did, I used to give the advice, and everyone used to give the advice that just do your best work, be true to your craft.
Correct.
And I tell illustrators now, you know what? Be nice. I feel like
That too.
Everyone is going through some stuff. Before we started this episode, I shared some of my stuff. And you know what? Everyone has stuff. Yeah. Everyone. And nobody wants to add to that stuff. I remember working with illustrators who would say, I'm going to do a great job for you, but I need more time, and it's going to go well past the deadline. Or they talk about their problems and why something went wrong. I think people just want to work with someone who's not going to bring more drama to a business that already gets drama in every book. Every book has its things. The last book I did, for instance, I had done the illustrations for it, and there was a lot of legal work. We had legal situations in which we needed permission. As I was doing the portraits of different writers, the people who were living, I often had to go to the family estate and show them the work. And in a lot of cases, they loved it, but sometimes they wanted their lawyers involved. So there's always some layer, and that, by the way, that comes more frequently, as you know, now at times. which brings us right back to the elephant in the room, which we haven't mentioned, which is AI. AI is why
I had a question for you about AI, and I deleted it because I just don't want to. Well, I mean, let's talk about it. Obviously,
we could glance at it.
No. Let's talk about it for sure. I'm just telling you, this is a sort of how the sausage gets made in terms of my questioning and how I put my notes together and stuff. I had it in there, and I had all these other cool things that I want to talk to you about, and that was the least cool thing. And I was like, I can't today. I got to delete this. But let's talk about it.
Well, we'll just rip it off like a Band-Aid, because that's what it is. It's people talk to me who claim that AI is not necessarily going to lose jobs. Mm-hmm. And AI is something I know you and I have that eye we could detect. What bothers me is when people can't tell it's AI.
Well, Bob. All right. Well, this is why I deleted it, because I have a really hot take. I've hotter than normal. I usually have hot takes on this. Actually, they're not hot takes. They're very correct takes that make my blood hot. I've recently heard a podcast from someone who I totally respect and listen to their podcast all the time, who essentially said they are more open-minded about AI than some purists. Like, I'm a purist, meaning if you're anti-AI, that makes you a purist. And if you're open to the idea of using AI, that you're more open-minded about it. And I did not like that wording. I don't agree with that wording. I don't think that being open-minded, I don't know. The open-minded, what are you open-minded about?
Well, you and me are recognizing it's a problem one way or the other. Right. Whatever level of AI you want to use, it's still something to address, even if it's just the attitude and approach that people have toward it. Mm-hmm. When people ask me for advice, illustrators, mm-hmm. the advice I give them, if we could try to put a nice spin on this, is just try to do something a robot can't do. Try to do work that is so original and organic that you feel like you're breaking away from stuff that looks like it borderlines on AI, as some illustrators have shown me their work, and it feels like they're on the fence. And I explained to them that that's going to be a problem possibly, because their work does feel like it's leaning that way. And so do something that you think AI can't do, which is hard to predict, of course.
Well, the other thing too is, you and I both have an eye for it. I think a lot of people do have eyes for it. They can recognize that AI. It's the difference is some of us are, quote unquote purists about it. We point it out and say this is terrible, and then other people who do recognize it accept it because they're fine with whatever. They're fine with having fake flowers on their countertop instead of real ones. People who are sort of on the fence and they're like, well, maybe I'll use a little bit of it. Be careful. Because every legitimate publisher has contract wording says something along the lines of, I hereby declare that I did not use AI for this work. Most, if not all, illustration competitions are all anti-AI. So if you want to get into publishing or win an award or something, then stay away.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I forgot. That's something to bring up, that there are people who are making it official, unwelcome, Matt, to those contests, some publishers. You're right. That's all good news to see that people are making a stand and not afraid to say something.
Right.
It's supporting the artists.
Yeah.
AI is very complicated. I mean, you and me are going to say, science, technology, and medicine. These are going to save lives, but creatively, it's going to kill creativity.
I see it with my own children, who know the dangers of it because I talk about it all the time, and their dad is anti-AI. Anytime they mention AI, I just repeat almost like Pavlovian at this point. Like, that's copyright infringement. That's a high-powered copyright infringement machine. And they're
You're telling your kids to lawyer up? Really?
They're like, hey, check out this thing. I'm like, you just infringed on some artist's copyright when you use that, right? I know. You're ruining the environment by using that program. You know that, right? Yeah.
Okay, so I have to ask you, what are the ages here? 6 and 7? Like, what age are we talking about?
15.
Okay. Well, still pretty young. All right. Good for you.
Hey, anytime they use AI, I'm like, you're putting me out of work. I mean, I'm joking, but
I think we did a nice job covering AI, and now we can move forward. We did.
All right, let's
we
move
set
forward.
Up piece. Yes.
Funnily enough, I bash AI every chance I get, and I've been doing so for the last couple of years, and I've yet to receive one email saying something along the lines of like, "What the hell do you know? Stop talking," or anything like that. Good. I welcome it. I welcome challenge. Bring it on. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. So let's turn our attention from the future to the past. Do you ever give yourself time to reflect on your career? How it started, crashing those Pratt classes instead of going to high school, to what you've achieved over the years since?
It's going to happen every time I do a workshop. I want to use an example of my creative process of how to think in terms of not be judgmental, how to work spontaneous. I'm going to share a story quickly now, just so I'll make it quick. The first piece I did for the New York Times was a contest, and it was something to do with illustrating charity. And I remember everyone in the classroom really working on this piece because I was a student at the time, and everybody was laboring over their piece. And I was just thinking about it, and I was going to just try to make it a concept piece and not worry about the execution. And the day of the deadline, I actually drew something up very quickly in crayon. The idea actually that I came up with was they have all these ladders coming from the sky and someone reaching down to someone below who needed help. And that was charity. It was like to try to help a person. And it got selected. It won. And it was a full page in the New York Times Magazine. And that's an example of me revisiting what I've done in the past. And I use that story just to help me illustrate the way to approach some different things. When people say, how do you come up with your ideas or whatever, I do go back to those memories. But do I have a room, a trophy room of just like my published work or anything like that? Or I don't even get excited when the books come in. I feel like however the book is printed, I may check maybe to see if something's not blatantly wrong, but I do not get excited and stop everything to pop some champagne or to say, okay, I'm going to sit back and I really just take this in, because that's just not me. And I do feel like there's always something for me to learn. And so going forward, I'm always excited to learn. And often that goes back to something that's happened before.
I'm asking that question more and more of late with folks like Maira Kalman and Steve Brodner and folks who've been around for a little bit. Personally, I'm in this mindset of reflection for some reason. Actually, I know the reason, but I'm not going to talk about it. Anyway.
No, I know what you're saying. Listen, it's, mortality. We all think about it. It creeps into the work. Yes, you want to say that you've done something you're proud of.
Yeah.
But it does go against some of the other thinking I have, which is I'm very okay with sharing my B work, or my C work. It happens. I've made peace with that. It's the way to get a lot done. You know that I've gotten a lot done. I'm busy. I'm busy doing a few books at a time. And I will be working on about 3 books at any given time.
Incredible.
But I'm not a perfectionist. And I know my work is not perfect.
Nor should it be.
I've accepted it won't be. But then it goes back to some of the things we talked about with AI. I just want to touch on that, is that I remember as a kid in art school, my favorite band at that time, The Clash, Joe Strummer being interviewed talking about the style of the records, he said, you want spit, you want mistakes. When something is totally polished and perfect, like a Phil Spector wall of sound, it loses something. And that's what AI can produce. I don't know if AI is going to be able to produce mistakes and spit. And so I feel like work that's spontaneous, that's not going to try to be perfect, but I'm just sharing what happened at the moment and just let it be. That might actually work in my favor with the current type of things that are going on.
I think that works in everybody's favor. I tell illustrators all the time, and I've said this on the podcast, and it's worth saying again, write the words perfect, best, and great on a piece of paper and burn the shit out of it. They do not serve any of us. And they are, in my opinion, unachievable goalposts. There's no such thing as perfect. Literally. It's a mirage.
Now, when do you know when you're working on something, when to stop? Do you have a bar that you say it has a feeling, and you're not striving for that undesirable perfect?
That's a great question. You must be some kind of a podcaster or something.
My podcast is insufferable. I'm going to tell you that right now. Tell people. It is really annoying because it's unfiltered, and there's a lot of spit, and everyone just says anything. But yeah, sometimes
I'm good with that podcast. I listen to it. I'm great with it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Cartoon Pad. Love it. Everyone should listen. What I tell, and this is, I put this in my own practice, and I tell illustrators this. In the beginning of any piece, you start with a blank rectangle. Anything you put onto that rectangle will change it from 0 to something. It's a pretty substantial change. Very minimal effort, very substantial change. Any line, any color, any wash you put on there. 0 effort, big gain. Throughout the process of this piece, in the middle, the amount of effort you put into the piece is the amount of gain you get out of it. Toward the end of a piece, this is where it gets tricky. You'll find that you're putting a lot of effort into it, but you're not really getting a whole lot of gain. In other words, maybe you spend an hour on a certain area, you stare at it or you zoom out and you're like, nothing really changed. You're probably done. So there's no real finish line, in my view. In art, there's no finish line. I always go for like this satisfied shrug. If I can hit a satisfied shrug, like, yeah, little shrug, I'm good with this, then you're good. If you can get consistently a satisfied shrug at least across the board with every piece, you're going to be in incredibly good shape. And every now and then, there's going to be a piece that's going to blow you away. You're going to look at it and go, how the hell did I do that? Like, you'll like zone out and snap back in. You have this amazing masterpiece. And every now and then, you'll do a piece that makes you doubt you even knew how to draw to begin with.
I'm trying to digest this, and that's almost a mic drop right there. You can end it. Let me just clarify what you said.
Go for it.
Because I'm trying to follow. You're suggesting also, between the lines I'm reading, that the first marks you make, the first things you do on that blank page are the most important. You are accelerating and you're deaccelerating as you go on to the point that you feel like you are no longer making significant changes? Is that a part of this?
I wouldn't say they're the most important. No, I'm saying there's one stroke of the brush is going from blank to something is a big change. I'm not saying it's important. Sometimes those strokes, and most people here will relate to this, that first line you put on a piece of paper, you look at it and go, oh my God, I've ruined it already. That first line is a significant change from nothing to something.
Yeah.
And toward the end of the process, you're going to be spending a whole lot of time changing almost nothing. And at that point, you're done. And where I think a lot of artists get into trouble is they push through it as if they're trying to get that finish line, that perfect finish line, and end up ruining it.
Right. But I'm going to add, so my approach could include that if you think a piece is not what you want it to, it's not matching up with you envisioned in your head, which we all have that piece somewhat. It never comes to that, but it'll never be exactly that. But you could do radical changes and say you're going to change something and try something totally different. You could crop something out. You could say you're going to try a different approach. When you feel like you have nothing to lose, I guess. You know what I mean? It's like, now I asked this question of Jack Handy, and this is something missing from this episode up until now, is my patented name dropping, okay? So, and I really felt uncomfortable. I dropped
Maira Kalman and Steve Brodner, so we're 2-1.
Very good. Steve Brodner was my neighbor. He lived across the street from me, where I live now in northern Manhattan. Now, I never met him, but he also had as a neighbor Dr. Ruth. So So that gives a little clue for people who want to stalk me. Also, Robert Culp from I Spy used to live in the building. And just that reference alone gives you an idea also how old I am. But
right. Wait, Dr. Ruth, like the Dr. Ruth I'm thinking about?
No, my plumber. Yes, the sex therapist.
There's more than one Dr. Ruth in Manhattan.
There's only one that's 4'8". So she was there, and she had unfortunately passed away recently.
Right.
But what I was going to say was that Jack Handey is someone who I really idolize as a humorist. And we got a chance to work together on a couple of his books. And I asked him, how does he know when something is done? And he said the feeling that you don't have to change something, when that instinct to have to change something has disappeared.
I like that. You and I both know, and everyone listening knows, like creativity, whatever works for us individually, you know, my view on it works for me, and what I share with illustrators, Jack Handey's view is also incredibly valid. Like everyone has their own valid sort of definition of this. How do you know when you're done? Right?
I'll say that some people don't know. I know you're going to be.
As I was saying that, I was like, actually, no. Some people don't have no idea when to finish their work.
You're very, very complimentary in your podcast. I tend to put my foot in my mouth, and I'll say that not all artists are created equally, which is why I seek out the advice of certain people to get better. Sure. So when you say, whatever works for them, I will tell you as an art director that some illustrators didn't know when their piece should have stopped, and they had kind of went beyond that point in which it peaked, and they kind of ruined it in some way, where they over-rendered something, or they kind of lost the magical playfulness that at some point that piece had, and then they don't know themselves, they maybe have the right eye, that they took it away.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing, I think, as an illustrator, is to know when it works and doesn't work. It's not so much your skill as a technician and a craftsman as much as, did you make the right decisions?
That's what I tell illustrators all the time. Just make enough good decisions so that when the piece is done at some point, you can go, yeah, okay, and move on.
Yeah.
This podcast is produced by the Illustration Department, a global leader in online education for illustrators. Visit illustrationdept.com for offerings like mentorships and portfolio reviews, testimonials, our alumni showcase, our best-selling Substack, and more. That's illustrationdept.com. And now, back to our conversation. So, Footnotes from the World's Greatest Bookstores was published in 2016 by Clarkson Potter, which is a part of Penguin Random House. 6 years later, Footnotes from the Most Fascinating Museums was published by Princeton Architectural Press, not to be confused with Princeton University Press, which is part of Chronicle. Did Penguin Random House pass on museums? It isn't often, or at least I never saw it when I was in publishing, in which books in a series are published by different publishers.
It's all because of changes. People change. I had an editor. We did the bookstore book, and his boss was a lovely woman who I really enjoyed working with. Clarkson Potter at the time specialized in gifty books, and I got excited about the idea of doing something that was a gift. Some people have to do their Moby Dick book and say it's going to be highbrow. I kind of approached publishing knowing I could make an easier entrance by going nonfiction and doing books that really people wanted. And I am going to expand into doing fiction, but to get a foothold and develop a platform doing nonfiction is actually quite practical. And so we did the book. The book was a New York Times bestseller. I was very, very excited. The bookstores really liked it. I got a lot of love from that. And the people moved on. And I went back to talk about the sequel. I had done a sequel of the bookstore book with all these bookstores already illustrated. I have hundreds of stories. And the new person had no interest. We had lunch. It went poorly. As soon as I went in to sit down with her, I already knew that this person was just interested in not working with me. They actually sent me a box of my personal items because they had set up an office at Penguin Random House because I would go in there, do some work, sign books. They had all these boxes they wanted me to sign, so they gave me a space, very flattering. Well, all that was taken away when my editor moved on. And the same thing happened with other publishing houses when I would do a book, and then the person, for whatever reason, was no longer there, and everything changed. And sometimes it's just a question that they didn't even know about the project too much. In other cases, they really liked the project. The museum book was in the middle when the person left. This is now one of my new books called Footnotes from the Most Amazing Museums. And this was a labor of love. I loved this project, going to different museums and illustrating them. Mm-hmm. But my editor early on disappeared. She got sick, and then she just said, I had enough, and she kind of quit, and I never got a new editor. That division got kind of merged and was bought up by someone new. And luckily, a lot of books that went falling through the cracks, I was very fortunate that the new people did like the project and had total trust in me. And we finished the book, and it's just a beautiful piece of art. I love it. But that's an example of it get tossed around, and it could have easily never happened. It could have been kind of canceled at any time because the different people coming in, they're not. How could they know everything that went on? I mean, some of them were just trying to catch up.
Which one of your books had 6 different editors?
The very first book was bought by Simon & Schuster, and it went to auction. And what I decided...
Is this Greatest Bookstores or before
Nope,
that?
This is before that. This is called The History of the Snowman. So I did... So I went ahead at the time to the restaurant and made all these big snowmen outside the restaurant. And the guy who was running Simon & Schuster was going to come in and pass these snowmen as we were going to sit down and talk business with big cigars and martinis. That way, publishing is supposed to be... This is the way I like to start a deal. A person sits down across from me, and I lean forward and say, let's make some money.
Well, that's how it works.
That's how it works.
What are you talking about?
In my dreams. In this case, he went by, and he didn't see the snowman that we made with the help of the restaurant help, who put carrots on the snowmen. And that's because all the snowmen were covered with a crowd of people who were going ecstatic, and you couldn't see the snowman. And he sat down, and this man, we worked out what he envisioned for the book and all these other things we were going to do. He wanted to do a children's book. We're going to do merchandise and everything, and he couldn't have been nicer. It was really nice to meet him. And then 2 weeks later, he said he's resigning altogether. And then
what year was this, by the way?
2007.
Okay, so I'm there. I'm in the S&S Children's Department.
Okay.
So 2007, was it Michael? His first name Michael?
Nope. I'm trying to think.
Rick?
No, the first name of the guy, he wasn't the children's book. This was the adult section, and it was and I was getting picked up by Gallery Books, the imprint gallery.
Right. You were upstairs. I was on the 4th floor, so you might have been meeting them on the...
And the guy I was meeting with, his name was Jeremy.
Okay. That doesn't ring a bell.
And Jeremy, I won't say his last name, but I remember him speaking somewhere where I went to see him. And someone in the audience goes, oh, I want to get published. What is the best advice you can give a writer to making it? This poor girl was waiting to hear about speak from your heart, write what you know, and a platitude like that. And he said, be famous. And people just kind of groaned in the audience. Well, for me, it began about 7 different editors that my book got bounced around to, with each editor wanting the book to be something totally different.
Oh, God, that must have been exhausting.
And I was writing the excitement of it being my first book. Right. So I was okay. And at the same time, I wanted an intermission in the book. So I had gone to the New Yorker and said, I would like cartoons in the book about snowmen just to give people an intermission. And
Smart.
then I got to meet people at the New Yorker, became friends with Sam Gross, the famous cartoonist.
Oh, yeah. I have a question for you about him.
And we'll get back to him, but I'll go back to I'll go back to the Snowman books. The journey was, I kind of thought that this sort of thing happens. I'm just going to go along with it. But in the end, what came out was a book that I was proud of. But it wasn't the vision that the person who purchased the book initially, that me and him shared. So what happened was, years later, I went to Globe, and I said, I bought the rights back to my initial book, and I'd like to spend all my money making the book that I really wanted to do. And I spent a fortune getting permissions for photographs, museum pieces, and getting the book together, exactly the dream book I always wanted, which is a gorgeous, lush coffee table book called The Illustrated History of the Snowman. It's got all the same stories, but now it's something that the family could sit down and say, then they do this. Every Christmas, I hear from people saying that that's what they do for Christmas, is they go through the book and they read stories. And that, to me, is tremendous. It makes all the work that I did seem worthwhile. So that's the Snowman.
I'm surprised there isn't a children's book.
There was. It started, and each time it started, somebody left. There was so much upheaval. And at Simon Schuster, I'm trying to think of who I was working with at the time. And then at Penguin Random House, there was a guy who I became friends with, and then he was going to do a children's book. And that relationship got funny because he also wanted me to get him into the New Yorker as a cartoonist. He doesn't draw, but he wanted his jokes to be in. And then I learned he was kind of like doing that. No. And then the movie rights were bought out, and it was started as a movie, as a Christmas special. And then the crash of 2018, or whatever that big economic crash was, the investors lost a lot of money, and they took away $2 million from the initial production. We were filming in Switzerland. So it was all these stops and goes. And now another person is working now and making it a movie. So it's got a life that keeps on going, but it never really feels like a real thing, of course. And this goes for anyone, whether you're doing a cartoon or writing a piece of music. Nothing seems real until it actually is finished. And so I'm not really getting so worked up on this.
Right. Well, listeners to this podcast are going to hear the words Princeton Architectural Press later, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Teaser.
Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about it. Moving on. So 2007 was actually a pretty big year for you, because as I understand it, you started your cartooning career around that time with help from the aforementioned Sam Gross. What was that?
No. He didn't help me. He tricked me.
He dared you.
Yeah, he dared me, and
Well, that's help.
I told him. I said, I blame you for all of this. And he in his scruff voice would say, Don't get on my case. It's your fault.
So how did he dare you?
We bonded. We both were from the South Bronx.
Yep.
He encouraged me. He had known that I wrote humor for different places. I worked for like Spy Magazine, which people don't know, but they know Mad Magazine, and I did some stuff in them. And I wrote, jokes and stuff, and I did drawings. I did illustrations, but I never tried to do cartoons. It kind of wasn't on my radar, but I quickly got really into it, seeing Sam Gross, and then I met Gaham Wilson and Leo Cullum, and then I started really enjoying the cartoons. I said, well, I'll give it a try, and I really was lucky because I learned later that it's not easy to sell. I was lucky in the sense that I sold like the first gag cartoon that I drew, but then it was a while before I would sell another cartoon, and it was never frequent. It's not like I was selling each week. It really is hard to get sales.
We've tried to record this chat several times over, and we are now doing it on this day, which just happens to be, speaking of the New Yorker, James Thurber's birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was meant to be.
Yeah, you've been very patient with me. I had all these different things going on, and I've been looking forward to coming on and talking. I like talking shop. I feel like it's therapeutic, definitely.
Yeah. Also, today's an especially wintry kind of day here where I am, and so, just feels kind of appropriate for what are you, the leading authority on snowmen?
The world's leading expert.
All right.
I went to different places that had studied cultural history, and these professors had written books from the Middle Ages talking about how snowman was a form of art that was commonplace. And they had written up about these events that happened, like the miracle of 1511. So I stumbled upon the fact that there was information. When I first started the project, it could be a dead end. But luckily, it wasn't the case, that there was a lot of these stories that really weren't shared in the public domain and put in the form of a book that was, in English and not an academic book. All these professors had written, very much like academic journals on what they found. And I kind of pieced together all the information that was discovered.
Well, yeah, I mean, forget Jack Frost. It feels like there's Bob Eckstein nipping at our nose here.
Oh, God.
But back to gross. That's gross. Speaking of gross. Back to gross. I listened to the episode, your episode on Cartoon Pad with Sam Gross. You referred to him as the greatest living cartoonist ever.
Yeah.
He's no longer living, but what makes him the greatest, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a tough one. But, let's just start with the fact that his jokes have a better batting average of just being laugh out loud funny.
Yeah.
He just was able to provide the right amount of information to get the joke across. There's cartoonists now. A lot of them are really great craftsmen and illustrators. A good cartoon, a gag cartoon, is not about how much rendering there is or how beautiful it is. It has that sort of magic.
Thurber.
If it was so easy to describe what makes Sam so great, there would be more Sam Grosses out there who could kind of put together that formula. But I will try right now to mention a couple of things that I think work well, and that is his work always looks spontaneous. There are other great cartoonists whose work also looks spontaneous, and the people that come to mind would be Charles Saxton, people like Bob Weber, where there's a sort of fluidity and there's a feeling like they didn't overwork. It didn't come hard to them. There's something you see in stand-up, and you see it everywhere, even in movies, when there's sweaty comedy. Sweaty comedy is when it feels like it's trying really hard to be funny. It didn't come naturally. I'm guilty of it myself, of sweaty comedy. If I'm trying, like today, trying to be funny, my mind subconsciously on some level is trying to come up with, to say something cute. Like if there's an opening. That's sweaty comedy. Instead of letting it come out naturally, organically, not trying so hard right now to be funny. Sam was a natural. He had no pretension. He's not conceited. And I think that there's a balance where you have to have some amount of confidence that what you're doing is okay. But when there's a comedian who's cocky, I think that's a turnoff. There's such a thing as overconfidence.
I understand he Xeroxed or copied every drawing he ever made and organized it all.
He had to. He's an accountant. What he tried to do was he would try to get the most mileage from all his work. We worked together. We often worked at his studio, and he had binder books of about 30,000 cartoons. And his beginning started in the Army. So he had a lot of work that was all Army themed when he was working for the newsletter that existed. The troops had all these sort of publications, and they were filled with jokes and PG pornography, like women in full bathing suits with like the long legs. Nothing was cut anywhere, but they were smiling and they were kind of happy. And he would do some work for them in the same way that his a colleague of his, George Booth, who a lot of people will know him. Yeah. His start was in those Army magazines too. And
Bill Mauldin also?
Yeah. So Sam would have all his work organized. And so when there's things that came up, let's say he was asked to do a book on golf. He had a system in line that he could just kind of call those up and see what he could offer and submit. In the same way I do that too a little bit with folders. My cartoon, the amount of cartoons I've done is about 2,500 cartoons. Mm-hmm. And I've been kind of trained by him. You know, he is my teacher. He taught me everything. He would give me little nuggets of wisdom about the business and stuff. And one of them was I would not throw out anything. I would try to use a cartoon in some way down the road. An idea can marinate. There are times that I had an idea. It can be totally different by the time it actually gets published. But it starts off as a seed somewhere. Sometimes you put it away and you come back to it. That I learned from that book by John Cleese and his videos about trying to find yourself in a state of playfulness. When you do that, you don't make any judgments. You allow your work to kind of find happy accidents. Yep. You explore any juxtaposition that might work to a solution. But it also means that subconsciously you're putting work aside and you could come back in your mind it might be working on that idea and it could be marinating. And that's why sometimes you come back to something and you do have an idea that resolves what you feel was something that wasn't quite finished. And all of a sudden now, it seems to work with this new idea. And that's because your subconscious was on some level working on it all that time.
If your creative output, art, writing, podcasting too, were a person, let me frame it this way. If my creative output were a person, they're a trusted coworker who sometimes gets under my skin. How would you describe your relationship with your art and writing if it were a person?
I can't. First of all, take out the podcasting because that's simply someone eavesdropping. And thankfully they are, because I feel like then there might be something that makes someone happy and it makes me happy. So that's recreation. When it comes to writing and art, this sounds pretentious, but it's more like being a student because I'm always trying to learn something, even if it's trying to learn a shortcut. How do you do this so I don't have to go through all the aggravation and torment of trying to get this joke to work? Like, how come my cartoons are not better? What can I learn to make it easier for me or something like that? So I can't, you're giving me a question that I've never even thought of before. So I never even thought of it that way.
Well, I've mentioned it on the podcast before. Forget the, anthropomorphizing of art and art making. Let's just simplify the question. What is your relationship with your work? I mention this a lot when I talk to illustrators. How we think about ourselves is often how we think about our work, I find. Now, I'm not saying this is a true 100% across the board with everybody. But if folks listening just do a little exercise, like think about how you think about yourself.
Well,
that's probably in line with how you think about your work and vice versa.
I could do that. And I don't recall you setting up that sort of challenge in past podcasts, but I do recall you talking about the person's relationship, or maybe the fact that you're giving it to me now in person. It feels different all of a sudden being asked to come up with that myself. Okay. Because it is hard to. But as far as a relationship comes, that's very much feeling like I am lucky to have this. I am always grateful that this is what I get a chance to do. I never take it for granted. So, you know what? That's funny. That's really funny I said that, take it for granted. I don't know how far long ago it was that you interviewed a guy named Grant Snyder.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, oh, God.
Comics.
Oh, God, he's an orthodontist. I'd rather run naked through the sewers barefoot than to have to clean teeth, in strangers' mouths. And so that's an example. I wake up in the morning thinking, okay, so I have these deadlines to do.
Yeah.
How lucky am I that I have to illustrate the Guggenheim today? Okay?
Exactly.
So my relationship with my work is it's a savior. Now, I do not say gift. I don't like when people say my God-given gift to do cartoons. That's
me too.
And that's because I'm being totally frank about this. I do think that I could be funny at times, but beyond that, all the other stuff is just decision making. I really don't think that rendering of stuff, anybody could kind of pick it up. And I think it's all, if you make the right decisions, then the work can be very interesting to other people and entertaining. But it's something that's, I wouldn't call it a gift.
No. Well, because if you call it a gift, you're implying that it's bestowed upon you by some entity and other people don't have it. Why did you receive this gift and not someone else?
Yes. Yeah, I have a great approach. Making good decisions, knowing what to pick, what to do, not getting caught up in accuracy and details when rendering. If you look at my drawings close up, they are sloppy. But I made maybe the right decisions with light and color. And then when the forms clash, it looks okay from a distance. My work looks great far away. The further away you are from it, the better it gets. And
nah, that's not true. It looks great both ways.
But you know what I mean, right? If you look up close, my work is kind of not that tight. And so there's that.
Agree to disagree, sir. I'm a big fan of your work.
Thanks.
I can look at it with a freaking microscope, and I'd be fine with it. I had a little bone to pick with you earlier, and I forgot to pick it. Why didn't you add the Brandywine Museum of Art to World's Greatest Museums? How dare you?
Yeah. I had to narrow down like 160 down to 70. And there was so many great museums. There's so many great museums. So one of the things
I'm kidding.
No, but I know that there are a lot that deserve to be in a sequel. And I kind of would like to do a sequel, but it's really hard to convince people that,
Well, phone up the folks over at Chronicle, man.
Oh, I wish it was as easy as that. I don't think it is.
You can't email the editor from Princeton Architectural Press and say, hey, I have this great idea. I want to do a sequel.
Okay, we both know why I'm not doing that. I'm afraid to learn that they're not there anymore.
Oh, try it out.
I'm going to get that bounce back email.
Okay, then you'll know. There's your closure.
If this is an important matter, please contact Emma Freinstein.
And then you contact
Emma
Freinstein.
And then I start all over again. And that has been like one of the most challenging things about this business is that the instability. I think that is a really big matzo ball.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm not saying there isn't instability. It depends. I guess it depends on how well you can leverage your own successes. And you should. One of the things that I find very interesting with illustrators, and I'm in this boat 1,000%, is we do not want to celebrate our wins. We get really uncomfortable about it and awkward and bent out of shape, and that is not the way to establish and maintain a practice and get it off the ground and keep it off the ground. You have your wins. You, Bob, people listening, have your wins. When you're emailing editors, art directors, agents, whoever you're emailing, of course you should have in that middle paragraph somewhere, in recent months, this has happened. In recent years, I've had these books published. In recent weeks, so-and-so said this about my portfolio. If you're not doing that, you are leaving a lot on the table.
Okay, I got a couple of questions. First of all,
go for it.
So now, if I do this, am I stuck adding your Brandywine Museum? Like in some way, am I guilted into doing that? Let me just get that out in the open here.
First of all, the answer is yes.
Okay.
Also, Bob, the Brandywine Museum of Art is an old mill. It's on the river. It's Chad's Ford. It's Wyeth country. What are you talking about? Stuck.
I know.
You're not stuck. That's a gift. I'm giving you a gift.
You are. Rewards is interesting. I used to tell my students that you need to set up a reward when you reach a certain plateau for a goal. Like I used to try to get them. This is writers now. I used to try to say, let's do this. Set up how many words you're going to try to write a day. Start the day with 8 minutes. You're doing nothing. You're writing gibberish. No judgment. Doesn't have to make sense. But you're trying to get those muscles going. And you're also trying to get into that state of playfulness where you're not conscious about every single word you put down on the page.
Oh, yeah.
But then you get into the writing stuff. But then I like to say, yeah, you're right. If you get published, go for that dinner. Take your wife out and put it on your credit card.
So important. So important.
Because otherwise, you're building in your own motivation because you are your own boss. If you're working on a book or something or an illustration, there's nobody at the office who's bringing by that cupcake. You know what I mean?
You're
right?
totally right.
Yeah.
But 100%, Bob. My wife and I make up the illustration department. We have teachers like Kelly Light coming in and helping us out with rounding out some of our offerings and whatnot. But the illustration department is me and my wife, Sarah.
Do you write your name on the bag in your food court, or it's just because the two of you kind of know?
I don't know what that means.
At the food court, you have to make sure no one takes your lunch. So you write your name on the paper bag.
Yes, I have my name in the refrigerator on my stuff, and she has her name. No, we don't have a team. We don't have we don't have a manager. There's no one editing my podcast except for me. It's all us. It's me and her, right? This is something that we used to do, and I have a point. I promise everybody to this. When I was at Penguin, anytime there was a big win, or we'd get a starred review, or Caldecott mention, or even at the end of the year, we would always be celebrating our wins. Most corporate groups do this, and this is what we did, and I adopted it. And so at the end of every year, when I was at Penguin, we would go to a local bar and have a Christmas party. And it was just us, just our group, and it was great. Played some pool, hung out with, did a little schmoozing with the boss, and it was all fine and good. And then, the next day we talk about who got hungover and who's drunk and all these things. So I adopted that. And so at the end of every year, my wife and I go to a restaurant in Philadelphia, and we call it it's our end of year Christmas party business illustration department business dinner.
That's so great.
And we actively say, we had a good year. This is what worked. This is what didn't work. What are we going to do next year? And we have a lovely dinner together. That's our corporate Christmas celebration. And I think that's important to carve out time, not just, have to have a freaking dinner. You can just literally take a walk around your neighborhood and pat yourself on the back and eat a Snickers bar or so. Just anything to commemorate a win, any win, even you've been working really hard at writing a manuscript and you eventually come to the end of it, children's book or whatever. Great. Congratulations. Commemorate that moment, even in any small way. Train your brain to want more of that.
Oh, people are going to love hearing this because some people needed that permission. They needed permission to do that.
I hear that word a couple times a week.
And in your case, your holiday party is a great idea because there's always a little bit of tension. Is anyone going to hook up with anyone and go home with someone? But you kind of know you're going home with somebody. And that is an example of sweaty comedy. Sorry about that. That was terrible. What? I do want to ask you, though. I used to write, before they did the cartoons, one of the things I did was I wrote the gags for this comic called The Lockhorns.
Okay.
It's a cartoon strip, and people either love it or hate it. And I wrote the jokes for $10 a joke. Mm-hmm. The question is how do you guys get along with each other working? Because my wife and I had tried this briefly, and she felt I was too much micromanaging, and I tried everything I could to give her space. But then we were home, So instead of complaining to me about her job, she couldn't because we had just worked together.
All right, it's easy. Delegation and staying out of each other's way. So Sarah takes care of managing the schedules, and I take care of talking to illustrators and doing the podcast.
Oh.
And anytime I have a big question on, what should the 2026 game plan be? Obviously we're going to be, talking about it together. But if it's minor stuff, she trusts that I can make decisions on my own. I trust that she can make decisions on her own. So it's trust and delegation. It's how I managed my design team when I was at Penguin. I trusted my designers. I knew what they were capable of doing. I knew where they needed to be helped if they needed to be helped at all. You don't micromanaging is just ego.
No, we're talking about the perception of it. And you're throwing around the word trust very quickly, but that's a big thing to try to get that trust. That's a 5-part series podcast that we have to do in 2027 or something, because that is not easily to come by. And it's, to me, trust comes up over and over in my work. Is you're doing a drawing and the cartoon, you have to trust that you got the viewer coming along with you, because they're going to engage in making that eureka moment of making the joke work. Otherwise, the joke is too obvious and belongs in Highlights magazine. You need to do a cartoon in which the other person has to piece together. In the same way with a book, if I'm writing a book, it can't be dumbed down, and they have also got to trust that they are not going to have their time wasted. I got right out of the gate, I got to make it seem like the book is worthwhile to let me take them along on a ride.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We could talk for another hour about that alone. Yeah. I did want to shift over, speaking of writing, to Substack. How long have you been on Substack at this point?
It's been about 2.5 years, and I've enjoyed it since day one.
What do you grade it?
An A+. I mean, especially if your expectations is not that you're doing it as a sole source of income. And I know people who thought they were going to be able to do only that. And I do know a couple of people who are friends who, like James Breakwell and Jane Friedman. People will probably recognize those names.
I recognize Jane's name.
Yeah, and she does it full time. Heather Cox Richardson, she's talked to me about Substack. She's actually the number one Substack. And, they're able to do it as a full-time job. But I did it because it gave me a platform to speak my mind and to get out some stuff. There's a reason behind it, too, that's selfish. It gives me a chance to talk about, like, new books, and hopefully people will say, I see you have a new book out. That's great, and it's a form of marketing.
Yeah, I give it a B-, but shows improvement. And I love it, don't get me wrong. I think that there needs to be an adjustment in how people can support publications. Because right now I think it's limited. I love your publication, The Bob. It's called The Bob, everybody who's on Substack. I love other people's publications. I'm not going to be able to, and I'm speaking for myself, but I think I can speak for everybody. I'm essentially saying the same words as anyone else would say. I just can't pay $5 to you and $5 to this person, $5 to that person. It adds up. And next thing you know, you're supporting 5 or 6 publications. You're spending $30 a month. I mean, that's just not what people can afford. So I think they need to work on that.
Yeah. Can I add to this?
Sure.
I love talking about Substack because I'm so much enjoying it. I want to also talk to other people who are questioning it. A lot of people ask me about it. They always ask me different questions about it. The first thing is when it comes to subscribing, I try to remind people, if anybody wants a paid subscription, I will comp them. I appreciate them paying, but that's for people who really want to support me in some way, and they want to give me some money. But for seniors, for students, and for anybody who thinks there's just too many newsletters coming in, just let me know. And I'd be happy to give it to free, because it's all about talking, having a conversation. Mm-hmm. And if you throw out the idea that this is going to be the down payment for that Lexus that you're going to get next year, then it relieves a lot of pressure. You get rid of the pressure. And these are the things I would tell other people. You want to do Substack, it's not homework. Do it when you want to. Don't listen to the advice that people say. You got to have it once a week. You got to be regular. People got to know when you're doing it. You don't.
Yeah.
It's your playground, your rules. Next thing is, the next thing is this thing about how much there is to read. I know that you and me both get about 20 newsletters a week at least. I mean, there's just no way you could read every one. Unless you say in the beginning, and I put in the subtitle, this is a 3-minute read. 19 minutes if you're driving. You know, you cannot be looking at every newsletter. It's just too much. So you try to make it breezy. And then once in a while, I do something that has advice. And I happen to know a lot of famous writers who are happy to participate. And I'm happy to share what they are telling me, and they put in the newsletter. So they give advice, and those are longer. And that will be something that's a deep dive. But other times people can't handle a deep dive. They need just a stupid cartoon to get through the day again after watching MSNBC, or it's MS Now. I'm sorry.
I've that's something that I think I need to work on. I do the every week thing because that's for me. I do it for me. It helps me keep my writing afloat. And if I was just like, I'm just going to post whenever, I would never post. So I established I'm going to post once a week, come hell or high water, and I'm going to force myself to be an adult and a writer and fucking be an adult and a writer and write. And it's helped a ton. I don't know. If I'm being honest with you and the listener, I'm giving it an A+ if I earned a Substack featured publication, which is what you earned a couple of years ago. I've completely given up on that.
It could happen tomorrow. I was just lucky again.
No, it can't.
Yes, it can.
You know why, Bob? I'm not a celebrity. They don't give them to nowadays. It seems as if they're not giving them to like schmoes who have pretty good followings and a pretty good fucking platform, pardon my language. They're just, as you can see, it bothers me. This does bother me. I think they're giving it out to people who are like, have bigger platforms, and this is the frustration that ties back into how illustrators and writers are feeling like, well, now I have to be a celebrity to get published. This is the feeling I'm having with Substack. That's why it's a B-.
Listen, everyone feels the same way. Even Garrison Keillor, he's number 2 in Substacks. He is feeling inadequate because there's a person ahead of him.
You are a cartoonist enthusiast. Say that 3 times fast. Cartoonist enthusiast. You're a cartoon theist. Do you see Substack as being part of the future for cartooning?
No. I think it's going to be a form of expression, but I don't think you could transfer that being the place where people are going to see cartoons, because by nature, cartoons do need to hit a broader audience.
Yeah.
We all followed Peanuts. The Substack is kind of playing into the problem here of being so dispersed, and there being so many little stages everywhere with no one. Everyone's on stage and no one's in the audience. And I think that your idea, you're right though, at some point the business model could maybe entertain the idea of paid ads or sponsorship, paying the creators instead of the creators always leaning to their family and friends to have to subscribe. And none of us are in the business of begging for money. We want to create. We don't want to ask people for subscription. So I see that. Now, as far as the cartoons having no censorship, there is that. And there are some people who enjoy a big enough audience who is going to be able to now transfer it over. But I'm talking about the 99% of the cartoonists who don't have that platform. They do at the same time feel gagged. They're gagged cartoonists who are being gagged because of optics. Certain magazines, they're afraid to say something that's going to be upsetting that melon cart. And they're all afraid to being too woke or too this. And so what you have as a result is the current cartoon landscape being very soft. It really is toothless. People are all kind of, drawing the line in the sand.
On one hand, it's great for cartoonists. It's great for any creative person to express what they need to express, write what they need to write, post art, videos, whatever it is that they want to do, podcasts too. On the other hand, it is a social media platform. You'll hear the Substack team and interviews and whatnot like swear up and down that it's not a social media. It's a home for writers and all these things. It's still a platform, and I just worry that, again, I'm a person who is saying to illustrators all the time, you should check out Substack. And I still think that, but I'm not diving like head first, like full in love with what it can get better. And I'm hoping it can get better, and I'm hoping it doesn't get worse is what I'm trying to get at here.
Right. My expectations, I know, are lower than yours. For me, it was a chance to, like you mentioned it earlier, that you use it for improving your writing discipline, to encourage yourself to get more writing. And for me,
if it wasn't for Substack, there's no way I would have gotten as much writing as I've done over the last couple of years. I've written more over the last couple of years than I have in my entire life. That is a fact.
Oh, wow. That's kind of nice to hear. And that in itself is a victory.
I can't remember if it was Blogspot or Blogger. I always confuse those two, but one of those, I think it was Blogspot. I could be wrong here. One of them had, and I remember as an art director, I used to love this feature. I would go to someone's Blogspot, and on the right-hand side, illustrators would list off other illustrators that they follow on whichever platform I'm getting right or wrong. I love that, because if I loved that illustrator that I was just on, I'm going to love the illustrators that they like. So it was a great way for me to find other illustrators. Such a great feature. Anyway, Substack has that. There's what's it called?
Recommendations.
Recommendations. Yeah. On the right. I have a couple dozen publications that I recommend for sure.
Yeah. Now, it takes this time, like you and me talking to each other. I feel like I'm growing to know you more, and I'm feeling like, oh, yeah, I'm starting to get
a little bit. I have that effect on
your
people, and then they're sorely disappointed.
And then you ghost them
afterwards.
But your
joke was better.
It takes time to catch up. Listen, I'm just getting my MySpace page just set up, and someone told me there's no more MySpace, and there is that fear, like, are we investing all this emotional investment to something that might not be there next year? I hope this is not the case, but there's nothing guaranteed anywhere,
Exactly. So just do the thing you want to do, how you want to do it, share it however you want to share it, and live the life you want to live. Period.
There's a fortune cookie.
Yeah, tell me about it. Well, sir, we do have a lot of illustrators listening, and cartoonists and writers, Substack people. What would you like to share with them directly? What piece of advice or word of wisdom or something that you've learned over the years that you'd like to hand off to listeners from you to them?
I would say just enjoy everyone's company that you work with, and just try to enjoy the project at hand. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know what's going to change in the landscape of our field. And you could find yourself paralyzed if you kind of worry too much. Instead, try to just say that we're lucky, we're doing what we're doing. And just try to enjoy everything that we have in front of us.
To learn more about Bob, visit bobeckstein.com. If you find value in this podcast, you can support it by subscribing to my best-selling Substack. For $5 a month or $50 a year, you will access hundreds of articles on the art, practice, and history of illustration, unlock bonus podcast episodes called Extra Credit, and connect with other members of the ID community. Join me on Substack by visiting illustrationdept.substack.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.